My name is Jeremy Marshall, and I have more money than I could ever spend and less peace than I can explain. People call me a visionary, a genius, the founder of Marshall Technologies. They say I built the future. Maybe I did. But lately, all I feel is the distance between who I became and who I used to be. Every night, after midnight, I leave my penthouse overlooking the city and drive an old yellow taxi I bought at an auction. The paint flakes, the steering wheel sticks, the radio barely works. I could replace it tomorrow, but I will not. This car hides me. Behind the wheel, no one calls me, "Sir!" No one pitches ideas. No one pretends to care. I am just another man driving through the night. At first, I told myself it was research. I wanted to see how ordinary people lived, the customers who bought my products, the workers who kept my company running. That was the lie I told to make the truth easier. The truth was that I miss being unseen. The city looks different from this low to the ground. Lights blur across wet pavement, steam rises from the grates, and every street corner carries its own story. People climb into my cab like ghosts, exhausted, drunk, angry, in love. They talk because they think I am no one. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they sit in silence, staring at the city that keeps moving no matter who breaks down inside it. I never speak much. I listen. A woman once told me she was leaving her husband after 20 years. A man admitted he had not called his mother in a decade. A teenage boy paid me with coins and asked if I thought dreams were real. These moments cost nothing and mean everything. When I drive, I forget about the marble office, the board meetings, the weight of being a symbol instead of a man. The road gives me back the parts of myself that money erased. I like the hum of the engine, the way the rain hits the roof, the faint warmth from the dashboard lights. It is the only time I feel honest. Sometimes I see my own billboards, 10-story portraits of my face smiling down on the same people who have no idea that the man behind the smile is driving right past them. I do not feel pride anymore when I see them. I feel nothing. That night, the city was wrapped in rain. Midnight had already bled into morning. I was thinking about heading home when I saw her, a young woman standing at the corner of Lexington and 74th, clutching a cheap umbrella that had turned inside out. She looked soaked, tired, but not defeated. I slowed down. The tires splashed through puddles as she raised her hand. She opened the back door and slid inside, dripping water onto the seat. "St. Luke's Hospital, please," she said quietly. Her voice was low, soft, the kind that stays with you even after the door closes. I nodded and pulled into traffic. The rain drummed against the windshield, steady and cold. She stared out the window, like she was watching something vanish. I wanted to ask if she was all right, but taxi drivers do not ask. They drive, they listen, they disappear. I caught her reflection in the mirror once, dark hair stuck to her cheek, eyes that held something fragile and fierce at the same time. I looked away before she noticed. By the time we reached the hospital, the rain had slowed to a whisper. She handed me a few damp bills, thanked me softly, and hurried inside. When I glanced at the back seat, I saw it, a small notebook, water-stained, left behind. I picked it up. The pages were filled with sketches, faces, streets, tiny fragments of the city I thought I knew. I traced one drawing with my thumb and felt something shift inside me. I had no idea yet who she was or how this forgotten notebook would pull me out of the silence I had chosen. But that night, for the first time in years, I did not drive home empty. The next night, I could not stop thinking about her. The girl from the hospital. The one who left her notebook in the back seat of my cab. It sat on my desk all day while I pretended to work, its damp pages spreading like it was breathing. Every time I tried to focus on numbers or meetings, my eyes drifted back to it. The lines were delicate but alive, as if her pencil had caught the heartbeat of the city itself. I told myself I would drop it at the lost and found. But I did not. I wanted to see her again, to know what kind of woman carried so much feeling inside a battered sketchbook. That night, I took the same route, same streets, same hour. The city was restless, heavy with late summer heat. I rolled down the window, letting the air rush over me, tasting the familiar mix of exhaust, rain, and loneliness. The passengers came and went. A man in a rumpled suit who kept checking his phone, whispering, "I'm sorry," into the receiver. A couple fighting about love, about loyalty, about who deserved more of the blame. Then a silent woman holding grocery bags full of nothing but instant noodles. Each face blurred into the next, like scenes from someone else's life. But every time the light turned red, I caught myself searching the sidewalks for her. I told myself it was curiosity. It was not. It was hunger, the kind I had not felt in years. I thought about her voice, soft but sure, about the way her eyes had looked past me, as if she saw something in the dark I could not. I tried to picture her story. Maybe she worked at the hospital. Maybe she was visiting someone she loved. Maybe she was just as lost as I was, pretending not to be. Around 2 in the morning, I stopped by the same corner where I'd first seen her. The street was nearly empty, the lamplight spilling over puddles that mirrored the sky. I almost laughed at myself. Jeremy Marshall, billionaire, waiting on a stranger like a fool. Then the door opened. "Hey," she said, breathless, as if she'd been running. "I didn't think I'd find you again." Her hair was still damp from the mist, her cheeks flushed. She held out a crumpled receipt. "You drove me last night. I left something in your cab, a notebook." I reached for the glove box and handed it to her. "You mean this?" Her eyes lit up with relief. "Oh my God, yes. I thought it was gone forever." She pressed it to her chest like something sacred. "Thank you." I shrugged, pretending calm while my pulse thundered. "No problem." She smiled, small and tired but real. "You just saved my entire week. Can I pay you extra for the trouble?" I shook my head. "Already paid?" She hesitated. "Then at least let me buy you coffee sometime." "For being decent." The word decent hit harder than it should have. I had not been called that in years. People called me powerful, brilliant, impossible, but never decent. "Maybe," I said, keeping my tone neutral. She smiled again, softer this time, and gave me a name. "Maya." I repeated it quietly. "Maya." It felt warm in my mouth, like a secret I was meant to keep. When she left, the cab felt colder, emptier. I watched her disappear into the hospital's glass doors, the glow swallowing her whole. The city moved on, but something in me didn't. For the first time in a long while, I wanted to see someone not because I needed them, not because they wanted something from me, but because their presence reminded me what it felt like to be alive. I started driving the same route every night after that. Same hour. Same streets. Same quiet hope that she would appear again. I told myself it was coincidence, that I liked the hospital route because it was peaceful, but I was lying to myself even then. I was waiting for her. And one night, she came. Maya stepped into the cab with her sketchbook clutched to her chest, her hair tied loosely, eyes half asleep from exhaustion. She smiled when she saw me, that small, unguarded smile that made something inside me settle and stir all at once. "I hoped it would be you," she said. The words hit harder than I expected. Nobody hoped for me anymore. They expected me, feared me, admired me, but hoped? Never. She sank into the back seat and sighed, the kind of sigh that belongs to people who work too hard for too little. "Another double shift," she murmured. "Feels like I live at that hospital." "You a nurse?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Nurse's aide, she said, gazing out the window. Mostly paperwork and walking patients to tests. Not glamorous, but it pays. I glanced at her reflection in the rearview mirror. There was tiredness, yes, but beneath it, warmth. The kind that can't be taught. It matters, I said quietly. She smiled faintly. You sound like someone who believes that. I didn't tell her that I hadn't believed in anything real for years. That my world was built on contracts and screens and boardroom applause. That I was Jeremy Marshall, the man who could buy her entire hospital and never feel a thing. No, I told her nothing. That was my first lie. I became someone simpler. Someone she could talk to. A cab driver who listened and remembered. When she told me her brother was sick, I listened. When she said she drew to keep from breaking, I nodded. I didn't tell her I had seen those drawings 100 times since the night she left her sketchbook behind, memorizing the strokes like they were maps to a life I'd forgotten how to live. The night deepened around us. Streetlights blurred against the glass. We passed Central Park, where the trees looked like shadows reaching for the moon. She leaned her head against the window, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you ever feel like the city's too loud for your thoughts? All the time, I said. That's why I drive. She turned toward me then, studying my face in the mirror. Her gaze was soft, curious, unafraid. You don't look like most drivers. I smiled, half amused, half terrified. What do most drivers look like? Not like someone who's trying to forget something, she said. For a second, I couldn't breathe. She had seen right through me, through the mask, through the walls I built with money and power. She looked at me as if I wasn't invisible anymore. When we reached her building, she lingered for a moment, fingers tracing the strap of her bag. Thanks for listening, she said. It's nice, talking without pretending. If only she knew. She paid, but I didn't touch the money until she was gone. I watched her walk toward the flickering lights of the hospital, the rain catching on her shoulders. When I drove off, her reflection still lingered in the glass. I told myself I could keep the lie small, that I could just be her driver. But as her name echoed in my head, I knew that was impossible. For the first time in years, I didn't want to go home. I wanted to turn the cab around and wait until I saw her again. Maya started finding my cab on purpose. She never said it outright, but I could tell. Some nights she would come out of the hospital looking exhausted, spot my taxi, and that quiet smile would appear, the one that could thaw through any lie I was living. You again, she'd say softly, like it was the best coincidence in the world. It became our ritual. She'd slide into the back seat, drop her bag beside her, and I'd start the meter even though I never cared about the fare. The city outside blurred into streaks of gold and blue as she spoke, her voice weaving through the hum of the engine. She told me about her patients, about an old man who refused to eat unless she sat beside him, about a little girl who called her Sunshine Nurse. She spoke of her brother, too. Daniel, 23. Born with a heart that never quite learned rhythm. He sketches better than me, she said once, smiling at the window. I think drawing is his way of breathing. I wanted to tell her that she was the one who made the world breathe lighter, but I stayed quiet. Sometimes we drove without destination, just following the lights. The silence between us wasn't empty, it felt alive, like something unspoken humming beneath the surface. When she laughed, I caught myself grinning like an idiot. When she felt quiet, I wanted to ask what she was thinking but didn't dare. It scared me, how easy it became to wait for her. How her presence softened everything hard inside me. The man who built empires now waited outside a hospital just to catch a glimpse of a tired woman with paint on her fingers. I'd sit in the cab after she left, watching her disappear into the fluorescent glow of the lobby, my chest tight with something that felt too close to need. One night, she caught me staring. The rain was steady, tapping gently against the windshield. She tilted her head, studying me through the glass divider. "You always look like you're somewhere else," she said. "Maybe I am," I replied. Her lips curved. "Where?" I swallowed. "Wherever you are, I guess." The words slipped out before I could stop them. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me, really looked. There was a quiet sadness in her eyes, but something tender too. "Careful," she whispered, her voice trembling a little. "That almost sounds like a confession." I wanted to say it was. Instead, I forced a smile. "Maybe it's just the rain." When I pulled up at her building, she lingered longer than usual. "You ever think," she said softly, "that maybe we meet certain people when we're supposed to?" "I think about it every night," I admitted. She smiled, eyes shining faintly under the streetlight. Then she leaned forward, resting her hand briefly on the back of my seat. Her fingers brushed mine, just enough to make my pulse lose its rhythm. "Good night, Jeremy," she whispered. I froze. She'd never asked my name, and I'd never told her. Hearing it from her lips was like being seen for the first time in years. When she was gone, I sat there with my heart hammering, the rain blurring everything outside into color and noise. I knew then that this, whatever it was no longer harmless. I was falling for her, and I was falling under a name that wasn't entirely mine. After that night, something shifted between us. The air inside the cab was different, charged, fragile, full of everything we hadn't said yet. She started sitting closer to the front, leaning on the back of my seat, her hand sometimes brushing my shoulder when she pointed at something outside. Every touch left a pulse behind, something that stayed even when she was gone. She talked more now. About her brother's upcoming surgery. About her dreams of studying art again when life stopped demanding so much of her. "I used to believe talent was enough," she said, laughing softly. "But turns out, rent and hospital bills don't care about your dreams." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I could have fixed everything she worried about with a single phone call, a few digits from one of my accounts. But I didn't. Because the moment I used my money, the illusion would vanish. I wouldn't be her driver anymore. I'd be the man people read about, the man who bought everything and earned nothing real. Still, the urge burned inside me. I'd drive her home and then circle the block like an idiot, watching her climb the steps, her shoulders small under the rain. There was something about her that made the entire city feel human again. She had no idea how much she'd already given me just by talking, laughing, existing in my car like I wasn't a ghost. One evening, she brought me coffee. "You look tired," she said, handing me the paper cup with her name scribbled across it. "You probably shouldn't drive so late." I smiled. "If I stop driving, I'll start thinking." "About what?" "Everything I can't fix." She didn't ask what I meant. She just looked at me with quiet understanding. Her eyes lingered, and something inside me cracked open a little wider. As we drove through the city, the night wrapped around us like a secret. The streets glowed wet with reflected light, and her voice was a soft hum against the sound of rain. I wanted to tell her who I really was. I wanted to confess that every mile we drove was a lie wrapped in longing. But fear won. What if the truth ruined everything? When we stopped outside her building, she didn't move right away. She just sat there, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "You know what's strange?" she said quietly. "Lately, I feel like this is the only part of my day that's real. Sitting here, talking to you." I turned toward her. "Maybe that's not strange at all." For a long second, we just looked at each other. No noise. No distance. Just the rhythm of two hearts finding the same beat in a city that never stopped moving. Then she leaned forward, so close I could see the reflection of streetlights in her eyes. "Good night, Jeremy," she whispered, her voice trembling like she wasn't sure if she meant good night or goodbye. Before I could say anything, she kissed my cheek, soft, brief, and devastating. Then she was gone, running through the rain toward her door, leaving me frozen with my heart beating so loudly it drowned out the world. I sat there long after she disappeared. My cheek still burned where her lips had been, and every lie I'd told her felt heavier. She'd kissed a stranger, and I'd let her. That night, I didn't drive home. I parked by the river until the sun came up, wondering when pretending to be someone else had turned into needing to be that person for her. The morning after her kiss, the city felt different. Colors sharper, sounds louder, every breath soaked with the memory of her lips on my skin. I went through my day like a man who had misplaced part of himself. The meetings blurred together. The numbers on screens looked meaningless. For the first time in years, business bored me. All I wanted was to see her again. When night came, I drove the cab to our usual corner, but she didn't appear. Not that night. Not the next. By the third day, the silence in the back seat felt unbearable. I replayed her words, her laugh, the way she looked at me before she kissed me, like she was trusting something fragile. I wanted to believe she was busy, but deep down I knew something had changed. Then came the call. A woman's voice, soft, hesitant, asked, "Is this Jeremy Marshall?" The name hit me like a punch. No one ever said it that way anymore, not outside my boardrooms or my headlines. "Yes," I answered slowly. "This is Nora Parker. I manage the Kensington Art Gallery. I wanted to thank you for your donation. The exhibit is beautiful." My blood froze. Donation? I hadn't approved any new sponsorships. Before I could respond, she added, "Miss Maya Collins wanted me to tell you her work will be displayed tomorrow. She said you'd understand." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Maya? Exhibition. Donation. And then it hit me. The Foundation's Art Fund. My assistant must have finalized the sponsorship in my name. The gallery I'd unknowingly financed was the one showcasing her sketches. And she thought I had arranged it. The next evening, I went. I told myself it was to see her art, but the truth was simpler. I needed to see her. The gallery glowed in amber light, walls lined with her drawings, New York streets, hospital corridors, faces of ordinary people drawn with heartbreaking tenderness. Each sketch carried her pulse. Standing there, surrounded by her world, I felt both proud and unworthy. Then I saw her. Maya, in a simple black dress, hair loosely pinned, eyes bright with disbelief. She looked beautiful and fragile, like something I could break just by speaking too loudly. For a few seconds, she didn't see me. Then she did. Her smile faltered, the warmth in her eyes turning to confusion, and then something sharper. She crossed the room with measured calm, every step echoing. "Jeremy Marshall," she said quietly. "I almost didn't recognize you without the baseball cap." "Maya, please." "You lied." Her voice didn't rise, but it cut deep. "You let me think you were someone else. You listened to my life like it was a story you could buy." I reached for her hand. "I didn't mean for it to start like that. I just wanted something real." "Real?" She laughed, a small, broken sound. "Do you know how foolish I felt, opening up to you, a man whose name lights up skyscrapers? Maya, you have to understand. With everyone else, I'm not a person. I'm a transaction. You were the first one who saw me." Her eyes glistened, but not from softness. "And what did you see in me, Jeremy? A charity case? A project to fix?" "No," I said, voice trembling. "I saw the only truth I've touched in years." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The crowd moved like ghosts around us. She stared at me, torn between anger and something she didn't want to name. Finally, she stepped back. "You can buy every wall in this gallery," she whispered, "but you can't buy back what you broke." Then she turned and walked away, leaving me in a room full of her drawings, every line of them a reminder of the life she'd let me glimpse, and the one I'd just lost. I stood there long after she was gone, her voice still echoing inside me like a promise I'd failed to keep. Days passed, but they didn't feel like days, more like hours that refused to heal. I stopped showing up at the office. My executives panicked. The markets trembled. None of it mattered. I had built an empire out of precision, control, and logic, and all it took was one woman to unmake it. Every night I drove the taxi again, but it wasn't the same. The seat beside me felt haunted. The city that once comforted me now looked indifferent. I'd catch my reflection in shop windows and barely recognize the man staring back. The mask was gone, and beneath it was just exhaustion. Then, one evening, as I parked the cab by the river, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Asterisk, the car looks lonelier without her. Asterisk. My pulse jumped. Attached was a photo, my cab, parked in the same spot I'd left it. A single red rose rested on the hood. Asterisk, Maya. Asterisk. I left the car and searched the street like a man chasing a ghost, but she wasn't there. Only the rose, glistening under the city lights, waiting. I picked it up and noticed something tied to the stem, a small folded card. Asterisk, if you still want to be real, come drive again. Asterisk. No signature. No address. Just the challenge of a woman who still knew exactly how to reach me. The next night I drove. Not because I expected to find her, but because I had no other way to breathe. The city was quiet, wrapped in a thin veil of fog. Somewhere between Fifth Avenue and Madison, I saw her. Standing at the curb, her sketchbook pressed to her chest. She looked up, saw me, and smiled, faint, uncertain, but real. "So," she said softly, as she slid into the back seat, "the mighty Jeremy Marshall still drives a taxi." "I told you," I said, turning to meet her eyes. "This is the only place I'm honest." For a moment, silence filled the cab. Then she opened her sketchbook and held up a drawing of me. Not the billionaire version, not the man in tailored suits, but me behind the wheel, face half hidden in shadow, eyes tired but alive. "I drew this the night before I found out who you were," she whispered. "I thought you looked free." I swallowed hard. "I was, when I was with you." Her gaze softened, but pain still lingered. "You hurt me, Jeremy." "Not because of who you are, but because you made me believe that who you were didn't matter. I didn't want to lose what was real," I said. "So I built a lie to protect it." "That's not how truth works," she murmured. I nodded. "I know. I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who only see my name. You were the first person who looked past it. I didn't lie to play a game. I lied because I didn't know how to be anyone real anymore." She looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the sketchbook. "You think words can fix this?" "No," I said. "But maybe time can. Maybe the road can." She hesitated, then glanced toward the city beyond the windshield. "Then drive," she said quietly. So I did. We rode through the sleeping streets in silence, the hum of the engine and the faint rhythm of her breathing the only sounds. When the dawn finally touched the skyline, she leaned forward, resting her hand lightly on my shoulder. "Maybe," she said, "we both needed to get lost to find something worth keeping." I turned to her, and for the first time, there was no pretense between us. Only the truth, raw, fragile, human. "Maya," I whispered, "I never stopped falling." She smiled, the same smile that once undid me, and whispered back, "Then don't stop now." As the sun rose, the city began to stir again, but for once, I didn't feel like I was chasing it. I was driving towards something I hadn't had in years, a chance to begin again, not as the man the world knew, but as the man she'd found behind the wheel. The city was waking when we crossed the bridge, the skyline glowing gold against the morning haze. Maya sat beside me now, not in the back seat, the barrier between us gone. Her head rested against the window, her hand close enough that I could feel its warmth. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. After everything, silence between us wasn't distance anymore. It was peace. "Where are we going?" she asked eventually, her voice still sleepy. "Wherever the road takes us," I said. She smiled, eyes still on the horizon. "That sounds dangerously romantic for a man who once scheduled his life down to the minute. Maybe I fired my calendar." She laughed softly, and that sound did something to me, something that no stock price or deal ever could. It made me feel alive again. We drove until the skyline shrank behind us and the world opened into space and sky. For the first time in years, I didn't know what was waiting ahead, and it didn't scare me. I wasn't the billionaire hiding behind the wheel anymore. I was just Jeremy, a man who had lied and lost and still somehow found someone who saw through all of it. She turned to me then, serious, her hand brushing mine. "You know, I still don't trust you completely." "I know," I said. "And that's fair. But," she continued, "I think I'm starting to understand you." "That's more dangerous," I said with a grin. Her lips curved. "I'm not afraid of dangerous." The road curved along the river, and the city's noise faded behind us. She leaned closer, her voice low. "Do you ever miss it? The power, the attention?" I thought about it for a while. The boardrooms, the lights, the headlines that once made me feel untouchable. "No," I said finally. "I miss believing it mattered." She nodded slowly, eyes on the water. "Then maybe you just needed someone to remind you what does." The sun rose higher, and for a moment everything shimmered, the river, the glass buildings far behind us, her hair catching the light. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Her fingers laced with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I don't know where this goes," I said. "That's the point," she whispered. "You don't always need a destination." We stopped by the water and got out. The city stretched in the distance, small and quiet now. She stood beside me, wind tugging at her dress, her eyes reflecting the same light that glimmered on the surface of the river. "You know," she said softly, "the first time I got into your cab, I thought you looked like someone running from something." "I was," I admitted. "From myself? And now?" I looked at her, really looked, and felt something settle inside me. "Now I'm running towards something." She smiled then, the kind of smile that feels like forgiveness and promise at once. I stepped closer, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her. It wasn't hurried or desperate. It was quiet, sure, like the end of a storm. When we finally pulled apart, she whispered, "So what happens next, Jeremy?" I looked back at the city we'd left behind, at the world waiting to wake again. "Next," I said, "we keep driving, until it feels like living." The engine hummed as we got back in the cab. The road stretched ahead, endless, inviting. Her hand stayed in mine, and for once, I didn't feel like pretending to be anyone else. The billionaire, the taxi driver, the man who forgot how to love, all of them faded into one truth. I wasn't searching for who would get in my car anymore. I had already found her. And this time, I wasn't letting her go. Do you think Jeremy had the right to hide who he was? Or was it a betrayal from the very first moment? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever hidden a part of yourself because you were afraid of losing someone's trust? And don't leave without dropping a like and hitting subscribe. They say everyone who does gets a small blessing before the day ends. Maybe a kind message. Maybe a spark of inspiration. Or maybe that quiet little miracle that's already on its way to you.